When God says stop and the world says go, the story of the man who lost everything to find what truly mattered. There are moments in life when everything around you screams to keep running, to keep climbing, to never look back. And then, in the midst of all that noise, you hear a whisper. A gentle, quiet whisper that says stop. This is the story of Marcus, a man who had everything the world promised would make him happy, and how one word from God stripped it all away to reveal what was hidden beneath. Marcus grew up in a neighborhood where survival wasn't guaranteed. He remembers the sound of sirens at night, the flickering streetlights, the smell of rain mixing with concrete and desperation. His mother worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. His father left when Marcus was 7, leaving behind nothing but empty promises and a hole in his chest that he spent decades trying to fill. He learned early that the world doesn't wait for you. It doesn't care about your pain or your dreams. So Marcus ran. He ran from poverty, from shame, from the reflection of that scared little boy in the mirror. He ran so fast that by the time he was 35, he had built an empire. A construction business that started with his bare hands and a borrowed truck had grown into something the city couldn't ignore, buildings with his name on them. Contracts worth millions. A penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline he once stared at from below, wondering if he'd ever belong up there. He married Jennifer, a woman as ambitious as he was beautiful. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl, who attended private schools and never had to wonder where their next meal would come from. Marcus gave them everything he never had. But somewhere along the way, he forgot to give them himself. The world told him he was winning. Every handshake, every deal closed, every zero added to his account confirmed it. He was somebody now. He had proven everyone wrong. The kids who mocked his torn shoes, the teachers who said he wouldn't amount to anything, the father who walked away thinking he was disposable. Marcus had conquered it all. But then came the whisper. It started small. A feeling in his chest during a Sunday morning when Jennifer had dragged him to church for appearances. They sat in the back, him scrolling through emails while the pastor spoke about surrendering. The word landed on him like a stone, surrender. He didn't know how to do that. He had spent his entire life fighting, clawing, refusing to surrender to anything or anyone. The feeling grew. A restlessness that money couldn't quiet. He'd wake up at 3 in the morning in his king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling like a stranger in his own life. He had everything, so why did he feel so empty? Then one evening, after another 15-hour day, Marcus sat alone in his office. The city glowed below him, indifferent and infinite. He opened a drawer and found an old Bible his mother had given him years ago, before she passed. He hadn't opened it since her funeral. The pages were stiff, the cover worn. He flipped through it aimlessly until his eyes landed on a verse in Proverbs. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way to death. Something inside him broke. He heard it then. Not audibly, but deeper than sound. A voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Stop. Stop running. Stop building. Stop pretending. Marcus tried to ignore it. He threw himself deeper into work, convincing himself it was just stress, just exhaustion. He closed another major deal. He bought Jennifer diamond earrings she barely acknowledged. He showed up to his son's basketball game but spent the entire time on his phone. The whisper remained. Stop. It grew louder. Or maybe he was just finally hearing it. He started pulling back from work just slightly, trying to spend more time at home, but when he arrived, he found a house, not a home. Jennifer barely looked up from her wine glass. His children were polite strangers who called him sir and asked permission before speaking. He realized he had built a beautiful prison and locked them all inside it. One night at dinner, his daughter, sweet little Zoe, asked him a simple question. Daddy, do you love us? The question gutted him. He opened his mouth to answer, but nothing came out. Jennifer's eyes met his across the table, and in them he saw something he hadn't noticed before: resentment. His son stared at his plate. Zoe's eyes filled with tears and she whispered, "Never mind," before excusing herself. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He stood by the window looking out at the city he had conquered and felt like the loneliest man alive. He prayed for the first time since his mother's funeral. He didn't have pretty words or religious language. He just said, "God, I don't know what you want from me, but I'm listening." The answer came swiftly and terribly. Within 3 months, everything began to collapse. A business partner Marcus trusted was caught embezzling. The scandal dragged Marcus's company into investigations. Contracts were canceled. His reputation, built over decades, crumbled in weeks. Jennifer filed for divorce, taking the children and half of what remained. His so-called friends disappeared the moment his status did. Marcus lost the penthouse, the cars, the company. He moved into a small apartment in the same neighborhood he had escaped from 30 years earlier. The same sirens, the same flickering streetlights, the same smell of rain and concrete. Except this time he wasn't running, he was being still. Because God had said stop, and this time, Marcus had no choice but to obey. He was angry at first. Furious, he raged at God, the world, at himself. He felt betrayed. He had done everything right according to the rules he had learned. Work hard, build wealth, provide for your family. And now, stripped of everything, he felt like a failure all over again. The scared 7-year-old boy whose father walked away, the poor kid with torn shoes. He thought he had buried that boy under success. But here he was, staring back from the mirror, asking the same question. Am I enough? Months passed. Marcus took a job in construction again, but this time just as a worker, not the boss. His hands, once soft from years behind a desk, grew calloused again. He rode the bus. He ate cheap meals. He lived simply. And something strange began to happen. He started to breathe again. Without the pressure to perform, to impress, to prove, Marcus began to see clearly for the first time in decades. He saw how he had used success as a shield against his pain. He saw how he had traded intimacy for achievement. He saw how he had given his children everything except what they actually needed him. He started attending a small church near his apartment. Not the large, impressive one he and Jennifer had gone to for appearances, but a humble place with folding chairs and honest people. The pastor, an older man named Brother Samuel, greeted everyone by name. He spoke about grace, about second chances, about how God sometimes takes away what we reclining to so he can give us what we actually need. Marcus wept during those services. Deep, body-shaking sobs that he had held in for years. People didn't judge him. They sat beside him. They prayed with him. They welcomed him not because of what he had, but because of who he was. A child of God, broken, loved, enough. 6 months into his new life, Marcus was on a job site when he got a call. It was from a social worker. Jennifer had relapsed into old addictions. Marcus never even knew she had. She was in rehab. The children needed temporary placement, and Marcus was the only option. Despite having barely anything, despite living in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment, Marcus didn't hesitate. "Bring them to me," he said. When Zoe and his son, David, arrived, they looked scared. They had gone from a mansion to a modest apartment, from private schools to public ones, from abundance to just enough. Marcus knelt down to their level, looked them in the eyes, and said something he should have said years ago. "I know I haven't been the father you deserved. I gave you things, but not me. That changes now. I don't have much, but I have time. I have love. And I have God, and I promise you that's going to be enough." The first weeks were hard. David was angry, acting out, blaming Marcus for everything. Zoe was withdrawn, clutching her stuffed rabbit and barely speaking. Marcus didn't have nannies or distractions anymore. It was just him. So he showed up. Every single day, he made breakfast, he packed lunches. He helped with homework at the small kitchen table. He walked them to school. He attended every parent meeting, every game, every recital. He couldn't afford expensive gifts, but he gave them something far more valuable, his presence. Slowly, things began to shift. David started talking to him, really talking. About his fears, his anger, his confusion. Marcus listened without defending himself. He apologized. He admitted he had been wrong, that he had chosen the wrong things for too long. And something in David's eyes softened. Zoe started sitting beside him during evening prayers. She'd hold his hand and whisper her own prayers. One night, she climbed into his lap and said, "Daddy, I like you better now." Marcus held her and cried, because he liked himself better now too. Marcus also started reaching out to others in his neighborhood. The very place he had once been ashamed of became the soil where his purpose grew. He met Miguel, a teenager headed down the same destructive path Marcus had once walked. Marcus started mentoring him, showing up at his games, teaching him construction skills, talking to him about choices and consequences. He met Miss Lorraine, an elderly woman who lived alone and couldn't afford to fix her broken steps. Marcus spent a Saturday rebuilding them with David's help. She baked them a pie and they sat on her porch talking for hours. David asked Marcus later, "Why did we do that for free?" Marcus smiled and said, "Because some things are more valuable than money. Like knowing you made someone's life a little easier." The world told Marcus he had failed. He had no empire. No status, no impressive title. But for the first time in his life, Marcus felt whole. He had walked through fire and discovered that what burned away wasn't him, it was everything he had used to hide himself. Brother Samuel told him one Sunday, "God didn't destroy you, son. He deconstructed you. He tore down the false version so the real you could emerge, the you that he created. The you that's been buried under ambition and fear and pain." Marcus understood now. When God said stop and the world said go, he had finally chosen God, and in the stopping, in the stillness, in the stripping away of everything he thought defined him, he found what he had been searching for all along. Not success, not approval, not wealth, but peace, purpose, love, and most importantly, he found himself. The self God had always intended him to be. A year passed, then another. Marcus's life looked nothing like it once did, and he was grateful for that. He had rebuilt his relationship with his children. David was excelling in school and talking about becoming an architect, wanting to build things that mattered. Zoe had become confident and joyful, singing in the church choir with a voice that made the whole congregation weep. Jennifer eventually completed rehab and reached out. She was different, too softer, humbler, broken in the ways that make people real. She and Marcus weren't going to reconcile romantically, but they learned to co-parent with grace. She thanked him for being there when she couldn't be. She apologized for the coldness, for prioritizing image over intimacy. They both had been running from something. Now they were both learning to stand still. Marcus continued working construction, but he also started a small community program teaching young men trades and life skills. He called it Second Foundation because he understood now that sometimes God has to demolish your first foundation so he can help you build on solid ground. Miguel, the young man Marcus had mentored, was now in college studying engineering, the first in his family. He visited Marcus often, calling him Tio, Uncle. "You saved my life," Miguel told him one evening. Marcus shook his head. "No, Mio, God saved both of us. I was just obedient enough to show up." One Sunday, Brother Samuel asked Marcus to share his testimony with the church. Marcus stood before the small congregation, these people who had walked with him through his darkest valley, and he told the truth. About the empire he built on sand. About the whisper he tried to ignore. About losing everything and finding that what remained was more than enough. "I thought God was punishing me," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought he was taking everything away because I had done something wrong. But I understand now, he wasn't punishing me. He was rescuing me. I was drowning in success, suffocating under the weight of what the world told me I needed to be. And God, in his mercy, said stop." He looked out at the faces before him. The world will always tell you to go. To climb higher, earn more, achieve greater, prove yourself endlessly. And maybe some of you are hearing another voice right now, a whisper that's asking you to stop, to be still, to let go of what you're clinging to. I'm here to tell you, listen to that voice. Because on the other side of obedience, on the other side of surrender, there's a freedom you can't buy and a peace the world can't give. Tears streamed down faces throughout the room. That evening, Marcus sat on the small balcony of his apartment with David and Zoe. They ate pizza and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. The city hummed below them, indifferent as ever. But Marcus was no longer running from it or chasing it. "Dad," David asked, "do you ever miss it?" That man had everything except what mattered. You know what I have now? I have you two. Really have you. I have purpose. I have peace. Zoe leaned her head against his shoulder. "I'm glad God told you to stop, Daddy." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "Me too, baby." The voice that says, "You are loved not for what you do, but for whose you are." And in the stopping, Marcus found everything he had been searching for.